The death of a teenage girl is now front and center in the presidential campaign. This is 17-year-old, take a look at this picture, Natalie Sarkeesian. She died last month after a battle with leukemia. Her family blames insurance company Cigna because they say that Cigna refused to pay for a liver transplant for their daughter. The family's lawyer, Mark Garagos, is even calling for criminal charges against Cigna. But was Cigna, the insurance company, really at fault here? Democrat John Edwards thinks so. He's actually using this story out on the campaign trail. Here's Edwards during a debate earlier this month.
What's happening now is insurance companies are running all over people. I mean, the case of Natalie Sarkeesian, which a lot of the audience will be familiar with, 17-year-old girl who lost her life a couple of weeks ago because her insurance company would not pay for a liver transplant operation. She had health insurance, but the insurance company wouldn't pay for it.
Well, joining us now to discuss it, Fox News legal analyst Mercedes Colwin and defense attorney Rachel Kugel. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So there are a lot more questions about what caused this young girl's death than John Edwards suggested in that one soundbite. Let me start with you, Rachel. What side are you on? Who do you think is right here, John Edwards and the girl's family, or Cigna, which says it had no obligation to pay for this?
You know, I think the girl's family is right here. I mean, the fact of the matter is that if these insurance companies are going to go to the lengths of making medical decisions, then they should be held to the same standards that doctors and hospitals are held to when they make medical decisions that are wrong.
But Mercedes, on the other hand, Cigna had no obligation to pay for this girl's operation. It wasn't under the deal, it was not the payor out on any claims. And there are some serious questions here about whether John Edwards' accusations against Cigna are right.
You're exactly right, Megan. How irresponsible of Edwards to exploit this situation for his own political gain. Here's the situation. Frankly, Cigna went and did their whole due diligence. Cigna is almost an administrator. They are not the body that's going to pay, but rather they're the administrators that directs the employers or the families to pay for the health
care. So they just sit there and say it's covered or it's not covered. It's up to you whether you want to pay or you don't.
Exactly right. So here, and they went through their due diligence. They had a surgeon look at the case. They also had an oncologist look at the case. And they said to themselves, this is experimental. And lo and behold, in the policy itself, it says specifically, experimental procedures are not to be covered.
Let me ask you about that, Rachel, because Cigna says, look, we had an outside independent, not Cigna, outside independent panel look at this girl's case.
Right.
And those independent doctors said, no, this girl should not get a liver transplant. The procedure would be unproven, and we believe it would be, quote, ineffective.
Right. I think the term independent doctors is completely disingenuous by the insurance company at this point. And I don't know about you, Megan, but I want my doctors making that decision. And if my doctors say I need that surgery,
Rachel,
then I should have it.
These are doctors that have licenses, just like all three of us have licenses to practice law here. We are not going to take a stand on an issue that's going to compromise our license in any way, that can bring charges against us for ethical challenges on our licenses. So yes, maybe perhaps these doctors are being paid by an insurance company, but they're not going to compromise their licenses to practice medicine by saying, sure, don't pay for this because it's experimental. There's no professional.
Rachel, what about the fact, though, that Cigna did ultimately, out of its own pocket, when it wasn't supposed to pay, but ultimately out of its own pocket, it offered to pay for the liver transplant?
Right. That might have been the worst move on their part in terms of liability. I mean, that certainly does show that they did have the capability of paying for it. You know, I think that was a bad move on their part, and I think that makes Garagos' argument in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, Mercedes, that's going to be a problem for Cigna, perhaps at trial, that they say they didn't have the obligation to pay, but then they offered to pay for it at the last minute.
I think it's really PR. I mean, they had rallies in front of the insurance companies' buildings. There are individuals. There's a nationwide outcry because of this decision. So this is really strictly PR. It can be explained away by the CEO or the general counsel of the company by saying this does not implicate us in any way. This does not require us to pay for this procedure, but rather this is really a public relations issue.
Last question, Rachel. Garagos, this lawyer, you know, he got onto this one right away, representing all sorts of people who our viewers know. Now those two zoo plaintiffs. Is he right to be calling for criminal charges here against Cigna?
You know, personally, I don't think that's a bad idea. You know, I think that these insurance companies are going to have to be held accountable. And if it's not, you know, why should they be any different than anybody else? If you hurt somebody either by act or by omission, by failing to act, then you should be held responsible.
Go ahead, Mercedes.
No, there's no way that they're going to be criminal charges. There's no intent to harm this individual. This is done strictly on a civil issue. This is not going to proceed in criminal charges.
Got to leave it at that because we're out of time. But Rachel and Mercedes, thanks so much for your insights on it.